It is Tuesday, the 5th of August, and this is Eswatini TV bringing you Kusile Breakfast Show. My name is Nathalie Sitole. Many thanks for tuning in this morning. I am in the studio. I'm not alone. I am with my co-host, or colleague, rather, Sifiso Ngumalo. Good morning, Gwen. How are you feeling this morning?
Feeling good, feeling great, feeling blessed.
Good night's sleep?
Yeah, well rested. Besides that, just happy to be alive, and every day is an opportunity to feel good, because not everybody gets to be alive every day, so it is indeed a blessing. How did you sleep?
I slept well, actually.
Well rested?
Well rested, thank you.
Okay, that's a good sign. It means we're going to have ourselves a good show and a good day.
Of course.
Indeed.
And just to give you the heads up, thank you so much again for tuning in, but also to give you the heads up in stories making news this morning in other parts of the world. 9 people, including a 3-year-old, were reportedly kidnapped from an orphanage near the capital of Haiti, Port-au-Prince, and gang members are thought to be responsible. In other news closer to home, a white South African farm worker accused of killing 2 black women says he was forced to feed their bodies to pigs. The farm worker is among 3 men facing murder charges after 45 and 34-year-old women were killed while allegedly looking for food on a farm near Polokwane last year. Now, catch more stories in our international segment. But in the show today, well, more in the story is their bodies were alleged to have been given to pigs in an attempt to dispose of the evidence. Also in the show today, Africa is home to about 40% of the world's remaining wetlands. With these under threat from urbanization, agricultural expansion and poor enforcement of environmental laws, we engaged the African Young Leaders Foundation on how platforms like the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands COP15 are opening new doors for developing states in the continent to champion sustainability. But first, we'll have Tinzaba in a moment and the news at 7.
All right, later on the show, we want to get into, in fact, this is going to be our first conversation this morning, where we look at Eswatini, which finds itself at a defining moment with more than 70% of the population under the age of 35, the urgency to build a resilient, inclusive, and job-creating economy that has never been greater. Now, the World Bank's latest Eswatini economic update presents a bold thesis that digital transformation is no longer a luxury, but it's an economic necessity. But what do the numbers actually tell us? That becomes the big question. But also, are we on the path to inclusive digital growth, or are we simply building infrastructure without impact? This morning, our economist, Saneless Bia, joins us to break down the key insights from the projected growth to the SACCO reliance, which is pronounced in the economic update, as well as the broadband expansion. We also want to look at the digital access, skills gaps, as well as the regulatory frameworks that could either unlock or undermine our potential as we begin the current economic baseline. And then, of course, we turn to the digital imperative, which is rather imperative. Investment in people, governance challenges, as well as of course, ultimately the way forward. Is Eswatini ready to lead in the digital age? We interrogate the vision as well as the execution right here on Kusile Breakfast Show this morning at 6:30 with our economist, Saneless Bia. Love having him on the studio, by the way. He has really interesting insights and a way with drilling into, our economic lens in Eswatini.
But first, here's a look at what's making headlines in print. On the Times of Eswatini this morning, there's a move to sabotage Cat Matlala. ID probe exposed. It also says deceased employee's name was used in a cover-up attempt. Also, there's a move to delete evidence detected in systems by RSTP. In another headline you can expect is that of where there's an opportunity to apply for 6 jobs and 36 scholarships. Now that one goes out for our youth. And also phase 2 salary review. The minister gives the latest update. Also, you may recall that yesterday the Prime Minister, launched the grand plan to take Eswatini to first world status. In another headline, suspended status capital MD, 3 bodyguards charged.
All right, we turn to the back end of this publication to look at our sports news, and the top story there. Long wait might be over as the EFA promises VAR light in new season. country's football mother body also plans to roll out advanced technology. On other news, Ichabod leads race for Green Mamba hot seat, while Tottenham still lone move for Palina. And Mufukeng has been criticized amid exit, while Sun Hyung mean to join LAFC in record deal.
On the Eswatini Observer this morning, Phase 2 report finalized. Minister of Public Service Mabulala Masego reveals much anticipated report now at consultation stage, and also senators applaud the ministry for a milestone, advising against playing hide and seek. In another headline, nation heeds call for measles rubella vaccination. You may recall that the measles and rubella vaccination commenced yesterday. Also, the DPM received 844,000 malangeni worth of assistive devices. In another headline, ngicela kungaphukuteki, Princess Ncenge tells Minister.
All right, Eswatini Observer Sports, here are your top stories. Statute shock for football veterans. The big names have been kicked out. That is the former Premier League of Eswatini chairman Peter Touch Makakula and Timothy Tim Shongwe, who have been disqualified from standing for the upcoming Eswatini Football Association elections. On other stories, VAR light for the 2025-2026 PLE season, as a new era of officiating is on the horizon for local football, as the Eswatini Football Association revealed plans to introduce refereeing technologies at the start of this new season. While the former PLE CEO Ngobile joins Red Rhinos, that is Chief Executive Ngobile Makakula, who has joined Red Rhinos Ladies Football Club as their new Board of Governor representative. Other stories, Mhlongo for Green Mamba, that is a former Moneni Pirates gaffer, Bongani Mhlongo, who is set to be announced as Green Mamba head coach ahead of this upcoming season. While in Highlanders, they are building brotherhood, that is according to Thabo Langa, the Highlanders AM captain.
On the Eswatini Daily News this morning, Prime Minister Wasal Dlamini has called on members of parliament to rally behind the government's ambitious grand plan, a 30-year national development blueprint aimed at transforming Eswatini's economic and social landscape. Also, the Deputy Prime Minister has received nearly 1 million emalangeni worth of donation of assistive devices for persons with disabilities. The Minister of Natural Resources, Prince Nkokela, says not all power cuts are due to load shedding. Also, senators have raised concerns over water billing, rising tide of copper theft.
Eswatini Daily News Sport. Massive clear out at Highlanders AM. Close to 20 players are set to be released to open space for new signings at the capital city Giants. On another one, Karas back in Bird's Nest. He's back with Mbabane Swallows. While from the international front, we have Fernandes, who is critical of lazy Manchester United. Not only lazy, but very, very losing. Wow. They can't seem to be victorious. And we hope we can see a new page for Manchester United this upcoming season.
Well, I've got no comment. I don't follow much of football.
Surely you know that Manchester United has not been winning, though.
Well, I know that the fans are not happy of late. Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Even people who are not football fans know. Anyway, it's 9 minutes after 6. We'll go for a net break. We'll be back with our local news.
Ngikuphela ukulezama ukubalekela ukuthi singumndeni simunye sivale kwazana sonke.
Yini lamanyana lawa wena uyaphila kahle la? No. Angeke uyimele lempilo ufuna ukuyisusa. Utawushaka kabuhlungu.
What the hell is going on? Don't touch me. What is she doing here?
Angicabangi sinecabangisisile le nto le. Angesabi impi mina baba. I need to talk to her. Sorry, babe.
Ma, kokhula sitagcina sibonela sinejubile nyana.
Hi, sweetie. Unjani?
I'm pissed.
Ngiphinze ngomukela ngolumhle ehlelweni inadi tindzaba futhi ekucala lisuku sekubvutane ukuthi uhlelo lwentuthuko i-Grand Plan for National Transformation sale lwethulwa esiveni lokulandzela ukuthi umhlonishwa Mvunankulu ahlangane nemalunga eParliament kuto ethula lo hlelo lweminyaka lengama-30 ehhotela lahulumende eSpiki. Mvunankulu uthi bakulungele kuthatha tincomo letitawuvela kubo bahlonishwa njengoba lo hlelo lusacolwa. Esibayeni umhlonishwa Russell Dlamini lebeka ngumphathi wa-NDMA ngaleso sikhathi wachaza ngebumcoka bekuthi live libe nelihlelo lwentuthuko i-Grand Plan abengati-ke ukuthi emakhosi atawuthuma yena ukuthi ahole uhulumende aphinze akhe futhi eluse kushicilelwa kwalolu hlelo nembala nakangena ehhovisi laMvunankulu Dlamini wayimemedela indzaba yekwakhiwa kohlelo lwelive lwentuthuko lweminyaka lengama-30. Lo muhla Mvunankulu uhlanganyele nemalunga endlu yabayesikhulu ehhotela lahulumende eSpiki lapho bocwephesha bethula khona le Grand Plan. Umcondzisi wetinkhulumo endlini yabayesikhulu umhlonishwa Jabulani Mabuza ucele emalunga ukuthi nawo afake tawo tincomo kulohlelo lolusacolwa.
Sidimisele bahlonishwayo ngiyanicela nani ukuthi sisayilalela le document bayipresenta nathi si-contributor at the same time sitibambe tintfo lokutawutsi nathi bese siphumelelisa strategy sethu seParliament ngoba strategy sithi iParliament ayihambe ye bantwini so ke siyakholwa ukuthi nisalalela lokunye indawo sinasenifike kuma constituency enu bese niyayiva imuvo yesive after senitholile nine loko labatabe basicatsadele kona namuhla kuyawuthi ke ngasekugcineni ke ngoba wethu umsebenzi njengoba ngishido wenda i-oversight kuhulumende mhlase bathi seyi-final products le document siyawubeke sesiya-engage ngalawo ma-motions.
Mvunankulu uchazile ukuthi lo hlelo kubheke ukuthi lute nemasu ekuthuthukisa temfundvo, temphilo kanye nematfuba emisebenti.
Today, Eswatini stands at critical crossroads. Will we continue on the path that has led us here today, or will we brave a different path altogether? The Grand Plan is government's attempt to aim higher than we have before and set our sights on new possibilities.
Mvunankulu uthi balungele kulalela tonke tinhlangothi letitsindzekako labatawukhulumisana nato kutsi tibavunulisa titsini kusacolwa lo makoti. Ku-Program of Action, Mvunankulu waveta kutsi kutawudzingeka imali lefikako ku-200 billion emalangeni kutsi uhulumende akhona ukufeza konke lokucukethwe ngulohlelo. Kubika nothile Sithole naLington Gule, Pigs Peak Hotel. Lihhovisi leliphini laMvunankulu lemukele imphahla letawusita abantfu labakhubatekile ngetindlela letihlukene kutsi impilo ibe ngcono. Letimvo tichamuka enhlanganweni yase-South Korea liyatwa ukuthi yi-Children Evangelism Fellowship.
Emalunga enhlangano i-Children Evangelism Fellowship abona bumcoka bekuthi bantfu labakhubateke ngetindlela letehlukene basekeleke ekuphileni kwabo kute impilo ibe ngcono. Ngekusho kwamalunga lekungu-Yohinam kanye-ke naYihikimnam nabo banelilunga lemndeni elikhubatekile ngako kumele banakekelwe bantfu labakhubatekile.
And through the experience, God led the ministries to help all over the world, including Eswatini.
It is all by the Lord's grace And we give him thanks and praise and glorify him.
Laba bakaNam bathi kukonke bakunikela kuSimakatha njengoba nguye lo watiko bathi-ke kabamshiyi kuthi tonke tindlela tabo. Kungako-ke nabo bathi lehhovisi leliphinda eSwatini lidlala indima lenkulu kulabakhubatekile, ngako-ke lehhovisi liyadzinga kubanjiswa. Mengameli wenhlangano lesambulelo setinhlangano tebantfu labakhubatekile iFotswa Bongani Magama ubonge kakhulu kuba le nhlangano wathi lelo kunikelwe kutawusita kakhulu kudlala inzima lebonakalako impela.
Abantu abakhubatekile bawathole ama-assistive devices and the mandate le yentiwa ngilo litiko ukuthi iwathenge letinto letingakhona kusita bona bantfu labakhubatekile, lokungaba ngiwe ama-wheelchairs, lokungaba ngito tindvuku tekuhamba ngekwehlukana kwato. Lokho umhlonishwa kusenda-ke ukuthi siphindze sincenge sicele nakuwo onke emaswati netinkampane nabo bonke labakhona eveni labangakhona kufaka sandla.
Liphindla nankulu imbungatho Kusile lithi kuyathokozisa kubona tinini tenkosi tibambisa live ngalendlela.
Livela kangwane bengilelinye leli benefitako kuloluthando longaka. Sibonge Fotswa ukuthi athi Magama sakutholile lokho lomdumbadumbana. Athi ngidawuhlala nawo la ndaboneka nje. Bathi angithi ofisini ngithi kuhulumende asi receive nje kuphela kepha siyapha.
Lelo kunikelwe kufaka ekhathi ema-wheelchairs, ema-white cane lokuthi indvuku letisita labo labangaboni emehlweni, ema-crutches nalokunye lokunenge. Sekukonke-ke kubite imali lengetulu nje kwa-800,000 wemalangeni. Lobikako ngugiyane Msibengana nokuphiwa Mbamali Sisembabane.
Likomiti lelibuke kusebenta kwelitiko letemcebo phansi nemandla etimpungeni lithi litiko aselinake indzaba yekuhamba kwagesi lokuhleliwe letithi timpunga kupepetela bucala nendzaba yekwebiwa kwetintsambo telitfusi titsengiswe etindzaweni letitsengisa tinsimbi pheceleti scrap yard. Letimpunga betikhuluma ngesikhatsi imvuna lelitiko umhlonishwa wamfanenkosi lonkokhela etfulela letimpunga umbiko wekusebenta kwalelitiko.
Embi kwelikomiti lelibuke kusebenta kwelitiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla etimpungeni liholwa impunga Siphelele Mkhonta njengasihlalo. Indvuna yetiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla umhlonishwa wamfanenkosi lonkokhela wetfule umbiko ukuthi lelitiko lisebente tiphi tinhlelo tekutfutfukisa temandla netemcebo waphansi kulesigaba sekucala semnyaka timali wahulumende wa 2025-2026.
The low dam, therefore, in the Kariba dam have resulted in scarcity of hydro-generated power in the region, resulting in increased prices of electricity.
Leli komiti ke libe selitsingitsa kabanti lombiko wendvuna.
I-National Land Police seyicaliwe iyasetshenzwa. Siyabonga kakhulu kuloko etikweni ngoba kutasisita ukuthi sathi ukuthi tindzaba temhlaba tihamba njani nokuthi timanageka kanjani.
Uthole ukuthi nga-3 silalo ucishile gesi. So uvutha ngayo ngoba kukhanyiswa ngesakhizi. So ngikukhanza ukuthi lokho sihlalo kuyinkinga. Bengabeka indlela tekwatisa sive tithini ngalendzaba yokucima kwalogesi. Kunendzaba yokuthi nakucime logesi potentially singaba netigebengu ukuthi tigebengu khanze ukuthi setithatha indzawo.
Iqiniso ukuthi vele sesihlala ngemnyama. Kepha-ke emaswati ngeliciniso kungathi kwashile ngoba onke abebona sekumnyama abone sekukhanya kungathi ukuthi kambe kucale nini sesilo shedding noma vele logesi ubalekile uyabuka.
Scrapping is literal terms lisho scrap sla nase tokuchachwa nje indlela lasho ngayo babeshifu utokuchachwa into lensha brand new libalile lizelisha uchachwa imoto lephilako liphatha ubone ukuthi this is fresh ikhopha isese fresh uyabona ukuthi this one is not scrap but it's being traded. So
timpunga kulokunye tiphindze tithi litiko alinake indzaba yetimayini deliver kutsi tisebenta ngalokuphelele yini emaswati nawo ayazuza njengoba tetimayini tisemathubeni lasetulu ekutfutfukisa umnotfo welive. Lobikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza eParliamente.
Indvuna yelitiko letemfundvo umhlonishwa Nxumalo uthi uhulumende usebenta hlelo lwekucashwa kwabothishela kuvala letikhebesi letikhona phindze kunciphe lokukhala lokukhona kulabo lesebafundzele bona buthishela. Imvuna beyikhuluma ePhalamende ngeMsombuluko ngesikhatsi timphunga tibuka kusebenta kwalelitiko.
Naba illegal, naba kakhulu naba base higher education. Le actors ubena kusibabo. Lokunye ukhanza kusibabhaca. Njengomfana wakho nawe bekwenzeka kubhacela ufuthi sokugangile. Kepha na ke vele lo mthetho uyasho ukuthi asibabophe. And ishek uyayakhiphe lama notices ukuthi naba laba itholile accreditation. Ayabakhona lama notices laba bebe. Kepha vele ngiyabonga lokuthi timphunga timkhuthate lokuthi litiko ababoshwe nabantu ungabe sekuze kufika lapho khona sekuphuma letifiketi letingekho lethethi baside elamaswati vele wena awusekho la 2017 kaze phela umfana abantu basolo avolunteer all these years sitawucela lokuthi ngeke ngayifaka leka lokantwana ukuthi kukhona le gama labalikhulumako labo declaration yabona ke chairperson kuze the pedagogy labo declaration ukuthi phela sibambisana lena lesikole labo head teacher bakhulumisana naThesi kusabe kunene bekasolo umuntu lona angatholi lutho avolunteer akube nebuntu kube nale consideration singabe senze siya ngalokuthi awukho wena ku2017 kanti basolo athola isipho lombane bantu hala bemaswati ke basebenza ngiyacabanga ukuthi lawo ma exception kutafuna litiko
Indvuna yelitiko letisebenti tembuso umhlonishwa Mabulala Maseko uthi lelitiko liyayisebenta indzaba yekongeta emaholo etisebenti tembuso nekuthi kungabita hulumende 1.2 billion emalangeni kulungisa indzaba yetisebenti tembuso kufaka ekhatsi kuvala tikhala. Imvuna beyikhuluma ePhalamende ngesikhatsi timphunga tiyitsingisa kusebenta kwalelitiko kulesigaba sekucala semnyaka timali wahulumende wa 2025-2026.
Lo mbiko wendvuna kulokunye uveta ukuthi uhulumende unetindlu 37 tembuso leting-2,600 kanti 7 tembuso dona tingetulu kwa 44,000 kanzi ti-7 tembuso leticashiwe kulesigaba sekucala semnyaka timali wahulumende wa 2025-2026 bangu-533. Timphunga tona tikhulumise kabandi lo mbiko wendvuna.
Nje kuna 70 tigaca amajazi titulweni kusebenzele isitulo ligadwe ijazi kude umuntu olamva kwaso indzaba ya PMS lesikhathi bebasibekile ukuthi batabe sebayirulile ngalendlela abasho ngathi bataqala ku top management bayiphansi usese happy ngalendlela lehamba ngayo usese within a time frame ungaba kumkhuthata nekumcaphelisa lokuthi lelitiko lakhe ngiloleli bampelo ukuthi kungasuka umsindo.
Ngibona nami PSPF yandlondlobala nasi sive solo kukhona lokusolo kukhulunywa kancane ingabe kukhona yini longasishirishela khona kuko lo.
Ngicela kubonga kakhulu le improvement lapha ku PSPF Public Service Pension Fund lo 37 billion ngicabanga ukuthi 37 billion or 37 million kodwa ngathi indvuna isithi 37 billion ibisuka ku 34 billion siyabonga kakhulu manje kulama projects lento
lo 6 sithakhuluma ngaye wamhla ka 15 August. How likely is that usiniketa nje into yokuthi sibasethi imbema ngethemba noma ukhulumelo letawendeka yini vele because now ubuka indlela lethi sene data lekuthiwa bayimele lephuma kulamanye amave lengakafiki.
Indvuna ibuye nato letinye timphendvulo
ukuthi ama-civil servants nawo active abantu aphatheke kahle akhona kuya esibhedlela nawo lesifunwa nguye but-ke sisakusebenza siyabona ukuthi kucoleka kanjani sesembisa consultant ukuthi lo 6 weeks vele sitambamba futhi-ke vele kwaba ultimatum lesaniketwa yona ukuthi 6 weeks kufanele besicedzile sesicedzile thina la phase 2 si-public service bese kuba ngabe phela kudla bese ukwashela netitsha ihlobo letitsha ukuphakela ukubungutsele kahle bese uphinde uyambona siyathatha ngenhlonipho umhlaba fanele kube khona.
Indvuna yetiko letisebenti tembuso umhlonishwa Mabulala Maseko esandvulelweni sayo lesetfule ngaphambi kwelikomiti lelibuke kusebenta kwalelitiko etimpungeni ubike kulokunye kutsi sikhwama semhlala phansi setisebenti tembuso emalini lesiyakhako ikhule nga-3 billion emalangeni seyingu-37 billion emalangeni lobikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza ephalamende.
So thulenga lokusemthethweni umgwaqo longu 1.12 kilometers lowehlukanisa umhlaba wetakhiwo temabhizinisi edolobheni eBuhleni kulandzela ukuthi kufike emaphetheleni sigaba sesibili la khona uhulumende afaka imali elinganiselwa ku-15 million emalangeni. Losabambe kuba ngumphathi wedolobha laseBuhleni Gordon Mbuli uthi lo mgwaqo lekubheke ukuthi wakhiwe ngetigaba letisihlanu esigabeni sesithathu kutawakhiwa yona imivila yekuhamba kanti-ke ube wakhuthatha bosomabhizinisi labaniketwa lo mhlaba ukuthi sale bacala kusukumisa takhiwo.
Amuzungwenya egameni lamabhalane lomkhulu etiko letindlu nekuthuthukiswa kwamadolobha uthi kubambisana ngiko lokuholela imisebenzi lefana nalena emphumelelweni.
Njalo nje naso ukubuka lapha kwakasithombe esihle endaweni yaseBuhleni liyakhombisa ukuthi lendzawo iyathuthuka. Sidinga ukuthi konke kwenteka ngesikhathi kunale teamwork kunaba khona kusebenzisana without ukusebenzisana kubabede impumelelo.
Ganzi losabambe kuba ngumphathi welidolobha laseBuhleni Gordon Mbuli wendlulise emavi ekubonga kuhulumende ngekuchubeka nekubambisa leli dolobha lisathuthuka.
Siyabonga nje uhulumende kumaphakelo a25-26 usinikile 20 million lotawuqala lebesibhethu utawuqala masinyane leyo project leyo nakhona ikwakha lomgwaqo. Sibhekile sibonke leba ingwenyama leyababusisa ngemhlaba lapha eBuhleni ukuthi bevele base baqala basebenta bakha leyo mabhizinisi lebawathembisa sebatawakha. Siyethembisa ke kuhulumende ukuthi sidalokuwe sigadze kakhulu lempahla lenisinika yona.
Sokontraka lebekatse aniketwe lo msebenzi ubonge sona sivene lidolobha ngekumbambisa asachuba lo msebenzi ute utsimate ufike kulesigaba.
Really appreciate ukuthi nesinike opportunity to unleash lesakufunza emacollege njengeMaswati senda umsebenzi wahulumende lengicabanga ukuthi vele eMaswati onke ayadeserve uma khona kwenda umsebenzi lokuncakabo.
Simon Makakula lokhulumela isigodlo uthumise intuthuko lebonakala isachubeka kuleli dolobha laseBuhleni.
Sekuhle nje impela umsebenzi uyachubeka futhi siyalibona idolobha lakithi litaba lihle ngalendlela lesibona kwenziwa ngayo. Ngoba naso ulahleka wakhona khona kuyasho ukuthi kuyasenjelwa.
Lo msebenzi ke kubheke ukuthi ungene esigabeni sesine kulomnyaka imali losedulumu. Umbiko nguthabiso maphanga eBuhleni.
Emavaka sakho sekaniketwe esatiso sekuthi kungendeka etinyangeni letilishumi nakubili letitako angabe asatfola imali ngaphansi kwalenhlangano. Imvuna itemafa umhlonishwa neWorkenberg ithi uma lokhu kungendeka sikweletise live nasicathaniswa nemkhicito singefika ku-60%. Umhlonishwa uvetelo kunakachaza ukuthi yini leyenda hulumende angasikhulisi sakhe sikweleti kulesikhathi.
Indvuna ithi kwanyalo tikweleti telive naticatsaniswa nemkhicito welive i-debt to GDP ratio tiku-40%, lokusho ukuthi live lisengakhona ukuthi libhadale tikweleti talo, kepha uma leSwatini lingasakhona ukutfola imali kasakho, i-debt to GDP ratio ingate ifike ku-60%. Umhlonishwa uthi kufika ku-60% kungasho ukuthi hulumende utawutfosa medima sabhadala, kepha akusho ukuthi ngete akhona kubhadala leso sikweleti nasekufike isikhathi.
But the nice thing is our low ratio also gives us confidence in the private sector. People are keen to invest in our country. They feel safe here. SACU is quite a large portion of our funding. And we need to have a possible plan B because SACU could end. It's not dangerous at the moment. I think there's nothing to be scared about. But at the same time, it could come to an end. And there's a 12-month notice period that we have.
Umbiko wesigaba sekuqala welitiko letemafa uveta ukuthi isikwelete hulumende lebekade anaso nakuphela inyanga yenhlaba i-total public debt besiku-36.76 billion emalangeni lebekade kungu-37.79% wemkhicido welive. Lesikwelete sifaka ekhathi leso lesikweletwa ngekhathi yeveni lesingu-20.65 billion emalangeni lokungu-21.23% wemkhicido welive. Kanti isikweleti lesibolekwe etinhlanganweni tangaphandle tona ngenyanga yenhlaba besiku-16.11 billion emalangeni lokungu-16.56% wemkhicido welive. Lobikako nguNelson Dlangamandla, letinye tithombe tibuya etiko letemafa.
Ngakemidlalo emaqembu lahlukene akuleli aqhubeka nemalungiselelo emqhudelwano we-Too Fast, Too Furious walonyaka. Umsakazo wetithombe Eswatini TV uvakashela iqembu le-DRD Cycling Club liqhubeka nemalungiselelo. Lemqhudelwano utawubanjwa mhla ka-16 kule nyanga leSeptember. Kanti lokunye inhlangano ledlalisa umdlalo wenetball kuleli ithili izinga lekutimisela kanye neqhudelana likhomba ukuphakama sibili nakubukwa indlela yamaqembu bekatimisela ngayo kumqhudelwano we-pre-season netball tournament kule mpelasonto lephelile ngalobamba. Tingako ngwalumhleti indzaba futhi ecala lisuku namhla ekseni chubeka uthamele lihlelo sifisa utawalandzela ke ne-interview na somnotfo Sanele Sibiya.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusemndeni.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Nangiyobeleka bekunalomnye sisi nje satholana lesibhedlela singadani ukuthi sibelekele umuntu munye.
Ngingasho ukuthi umntwana ngiyamehluleka ngimoya. Sathi ngathi umlahla.
Mina bengiphila impilo yokuhlala ngigijima ngaso sonke isikhathi ngikuba bede badala. Ngabe umntwana nami ngitolala naye emaphayiphini kuNkulunkulu tosisifa.
Akabuyele emuva akhulume amaqiniso. Asukunyanyaza tena. Angithethi. Into wathi ngimdala. Akasudlala lo mntwana ngakho.
All right, welcome back. It's 36 minutes after 6. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show, the Tuesday edition. We look at now this very interesting development here with Eswatini finding itself at a rather defining moment with the latest economic update by the World Bank, with over 70% of our population under the age of 35. The question is no longer whether to build a resilient, job-creating economy, but how urgently and how decisively we act to make that vision a reality. Now, the World Bank's latest Eswatini economic update offers a compelling thesis that digital transformation is not just a policy option, but it is an economic imperative. But the bigger question then becomes, what does that look like in real terms? And how does Eswatini navigate the tension between bold ambition as well as institutional readiness? To unpack the numbers, the risks, as well as the opportunities, Sanele Sbia joins us now virtually to help us understand really these developments. Very good morning to you, Sanele. Thank you so much for making time. Perhaps we want to start by looking at the state of the economy as pronounced by this economic update. And the imperative is to understand the economic baseline. Let's begin with the big picture. How would you summarize Eswatini's economic position as outlined in the World Bank's economic update?
Thank you, Mr. Numero, and a good morning to the viewer. So when you look at what the economic update tells us about the economic position of the kingdom, it does show that the kingdom is doing relatively better compared to its comparators or its peers in the region. Our growth numbers seem to show that we are going to be growing at 5%. Which is somewhat above our peers. And we know if you look back into the years, you'll see that the kingdom grew around 3.4% in real terms again, which is above relatively above our peers and above the Republic of South Africa. But there are other indicators that show, Mr. Numalo, in terms of inflation. When you look at inflation in the current period, you will see that Eswatini seems to be just edging ahead. It seems to be higher in Eswatini compared to quite a number of SACU countries and quite a number of CMA countries, and also above that of South Africa. So if you look at what's happening right now, you'll see in the Republic of South Africa, inflation sits around 2.8%, and here in Eswatini, it's around 2.9%. So it's a bit higher in Eswatini compared to South Africa, and also the other interest rate differentials, which bring to mind quite a number of issues, in terms of capital flight in real terms, in terms of ability to attract investors in real terms. So those are the things that we need to look into. And when you are now looking at, the risks that the economy faces in the short to medium term, if you look at the fact that we have a 5% growth rate target, but that is largely driven by infrastructure investments and the government's ability to deliver the jobs that are promised in the budget, actually to execute and deliver the budget as it was promised in February. That's where the numbers lie. And we still see the report citing the kingdom's over-reliance on SACU receipts, which are actually a volatile sorts of funding in terms of funding the fiscal pace. So those are the risks that we're looking into. And we do know that there are emerging global tensions and there are emerging global uncertainties around, the tariffs and quite a lot happening in the global landscape over and above the geopolitical tensions that we had before the resumption of the Trump presidency. So now those are the things that we look into that are actually going to affect growth in the short to medium term.
And, speaking of growth being affected, I suppose the upside of it all is that there's a projection there of about 5% in 2025. What is driving that recovery and just how sustainable is it?
So that recovery, Mr. Ngumalo, is largely driven by the government's ability to deliver the budget, as it were. Those infrastructure projects, that capital expenditure, 7 billion capital expenditure package that we expect to be injected into the economy. So now that's the major driver. And then we do know that there's consumption, private and private consumption, that's also driving those numbers. But largely the main assumption is the fact that the government is actually going to deliver those infrastructure projects and is actually going to create those jobs. So now those are that's the major driving source. That's the story behind the growth number. So if the government and if we fail to meet our budget obligations and deliver these projects, then we are not going to get to that 5%, Mr. Ngumalo.
A term that you used on your first answer is, our reliance on SACU is a volatile sort of reliance. We've also heard a consistent message from the Ministry of Finance about preparing for life beyond SACU. In practical terms, what is it that is at stake if we delay that transition? What does that volatility that you speak of, consist of?
So what we need to prepare for as a country, true, is life beyond SACU, because I'll bring to mind the fact that Eswatini is a part of the Common Monetary Area for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA. We're also part of SADC, and we're also part of SACU, just to mention a few. And all of those regional groupings have pros and cons, and they all want to get to a customs union type of level. And that's a decision that Eswatini has to make at some point where we go. But what's at stake right now, Mr. Ngumalo, is our fiscal sovereignty. We need to be able as a country to determine how much money we are going to have based off of our production. And yet we know that the SACU revenue sharing formula, and as much as it is a beautiful thing for the country that we get money from SACU receipts, but the sharing formula can be changed at the bequest of our member states. And we've seen that happen quite a number of times where we're expecting so much today and then tomorrow it comes and it is changed. And also, so our fiscal purse is largely dependent on that, something which we cannot control. So now that's the main issue. We can't control yet. If we're focusing on domestic tax revenues and other domestic tax sources, some things which we could work around to ensure that we are growing the economy and growing those sectors. That's where the worry comes from when it comes to those SACU receipts. The volatility is largely driven by the fact that at times the adjustments to the formula, you find that maybe if you've been overpaid last year, now that's going to come out of your share this year, and all of those issues, things that the country has no control over.
Yeah. Let's look at the digital economy imperative. They build their foundation sort of for digital transformation outlook on things. One of the most striking lines in this update is that digital transformation is a necessity, not a luxury. What does that mean practically for a country like the Kingdom of Eswatini?
So we are now in what we call the knowledge economy, Mr. Ngumalo, when you look at the innovation and the evolution of economies over time. There was the Industrial Revolution and all of those issues. But right now, what drives the economy, Mr. Ngumalo, is your ability to adapt and adjust to emerging technologies and the ability for commerce to be anchored in and the backbone of commerce right now is actually dependent largely on those technologies, Mr. Ngumala. So right now, when the minister says it's a necessity, not a luxury, that's actually true. That's how economies are now thriving. So we usually say in economics, data is the new oil. Right now, the countries that are going to make it big, it's not the countries with big natural resources, Mr. Ngumalo, but it is those countries that are able to harness technology and, grow from there, because that's where growth is coming from. And when we talk of technology and digitalization not being a necessity and as part of growth, it is a major source of growth, because the jobs, that's where they are coming from now. And if you look at the billionaires across the globe, if you look at your Mark Zuckerbergs and your Elon Musk and quite a number of the billionaires that we have right now, those are tech billionaires. Right now, if you want a billionaire in the US, you go to Silicon Valley, because that's where they are. So the economy right now is being driven by innovation. And if we lag behind as a country, we are going to miss that source of growth. And I think the minister rightly puts it when she says we are going to be an obsolete nation. We are going to be digital slaves, when essentially everything you have to buy from across the board, and you can't do much. And if you look, Mr. Ngumalo, at the things that are happening in terms of our current account, balance, we seem to be seeing that one moving towards a deficit. And one of those driving factors which the report reveals is the fact that we're importing more of services. And I'd ask you, what services are we talking about? You'll find that most of these services are tech related. So if we need to get back and balance our trade balance, we need to be in a position to offer quite a number of those services domestically. And as a country, we are a country that is poised to get what we call a demographic dividend. So that means we have a youthful population, which we could, if we invested very well, use to grow the country and, get quite more of an outcome coming from those. And now, if you also then say, let us take advantage of this digital dividend, because the one thing that we cannot run away from, the youth, Mr. Ngumalo, they are not as traditional as the old generation. And they are the ones who understand how to navigate this technology landscape and make money off of that. So we need to make the investments to ensure that they are able to do that. And that's where the growth is going to come from. And furthermore, remember the country's economy for the past so many years until 2022 had been stagnating around 2% in terms of growth. So that means whatever it is we were doing back then, somehow was not working. And we found something that works. And technology can be one of those things that work to grow this economy and move us forward.
And we've seen, of course, the progress. The government has exceeded its broadband capacity targets, and initiatives like Government in Your Hand that have been launched. And it makes me wonder, because as we see these projects being launched, what is next? Are we going to really enjoy the launch of these programs when, on the other side, we have, it's been pronounced, we have exceeded our broadband capacity targets?
I think what we need to do on that front, Mr. Ngumalo, number one is we need to be able to see a return on those investments, right? And we need to drive efficiencies. So in terms of returns on those investments, number one, we need to be able as a country not only just to exceed that capacity. You need to look at the numbers. The numbers say 56% of Eswatini are using internet, even though 100% there is 96% coverage. And then now you have to ask yourself that you have government in your hands. Are Eswatini going to use it, or people are still going to go and queue? So what we need to do right now is to deal with those bottlenecks. Why aren't people using the internet when we have such good coverage with 96% of the population being covered? That means we've exceeded the capacity, but it seems to be concentrated in rural areas, because when you then look in terms of the spread of the coverage across the country, you can see that we're not doing so well on that front. But in terms of people covered with that internet, that one is on that front. Yeah. So we need to deal with the data costs. That's one other thing that we need to deal with.
I do want to ask, because there are the critical gaps that are still visible, right? Where are they really? Are they in infrastructure? Because you speak of the cost of data now, but there's the conversation around infrastructure, which I suppose the ministry notes very well as it tries to build broadband capacity across the whole country. But the affordability, that is what you're speaking to. But there's also the access to undeserved areas. And this economic update does cite that there should be a critical role that the private sector plays in closing these gaps, especially in rural and undeserved areas. So I wonder, government, I suppose they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but I want to ask you, do you feel like they are being assisted enough by the private sector in making sure that we close all these existing gaps? Because some of these investments, they really do make sense, but it seems as though there should be more investment, particularly from the private sector.
I think what we need to do, Mr. Nxumalo, is government needs to know what government needs to do and leave others to the private sector. And one of the issues that we have been dealing with as a country, which we hope eventually we're going to get aboard and go over that line, is the issue of lowering the cost of entry. We do know that if you want to get into the technology space, you need quite, let's say, for example, if you wanted to open up and have another mobile telephone company, the costs are very much expensive. And I think I remember way back 2 terms or 3 terms ago, government wanted to ensure that backbone infrastructure is built and owned by government. And then you allow private sector to come in and ensure that you are able to service. And one of the issues that this report notes is the issue around the efficacy and efficiency of EPTC, which is one of those issues that we need to deal with. We need to know what we need to decentralize, and we need to know what we need to dismantle. And furthermore, we need to know what we can regulate. Right now, if you look at the countries where your artificial intelligence is leading the landscape, there are no regulations around it because no one knows what it is right now, but all we know is it works. You do it and it works, right? So we need to be able to know how far we can regulate around those issues. So that's where we need to work on as a country right now. Yes, private sector can come into the play, but you need to make the environment conducive for private sector to come into the play.
Let's be, thank you for your time. It is let's be our economist speaking to the World Bank Economic Update, which has cited digital transformation as the most critical imperative for the overall economic transformation for the Kingdom of Eswatini. 53 minutes after 6, we have our traffic update on standby after the break.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Mahle simo semgwaqo na Sergeant Nozipho Maseko sikuvusele khubonye wandlovu engabe lo mhlakuseni umbukeli umphathele.
Angikuvusele ngikhaba inkosi iphindze ngivusele naye umbukeli wemsakazo iSwazi TV. imigwaqo yelive laseSwatini sesiyihlolile lesinako nje ukuthi eMbabane umgwaqo lesiwubita ngekuthi isozisa road losuka khona ka-total filling station ubheke khona ka-late nawusuka khona junction lengena khona e-police station uyakhiwa bashayeli ke bayawuthi basebenzise umzila munye longena khona edolobheni bawusherishe lo munye umgwaqo loqhubekako namuhla usasenjetwa ngumgwaqo lesiwubita ngokuthi ngu-Dr. Sishayi Road losuka khona e-bus rank ubheke khona e-total filling station lo munye umgwaqo lesinawo i-Vunta Street losuka lolapha e-extension street umgwaqo ke lo uvalwe ngqi lapho khona kungasherishwa khona umzila ngulona lesiwubita ukuthi ngumkhono ubovu road bashayeli ke bayaxwayiswa ukuthi abahloniphe isebenzise emgwaqo baphindze phela babeketele umsebenzi usaqhubeka kuze batawufika kahle ngesikhathi emisebenzini leyahlukahlukene bashayeli ke bayaxwayiswa ukuthi labatawuthi bahambe khona lapha kamanzini e-remand center tibane temgwaqo atisebenzi siyabaxwayisa ke bashayeli ukuthi abanika nenhlonipho lofike kuqala anike lithuba lofike kuqala anikwe lithuba lokuthi ahambe kuqala ngalokunye inkomodo yaqhubeka dibasikhinyabedo emigwaqweni leyahlukahlukene even eSwatini siyatibona emgwaqweni losuka khona emezulu ubheke khona esikhuphe nanawusuka khona engogola ubheke khona kalonhlupheko sinisatibona ke emgwaqweni losuka khona kulukhula ubheke khona eBig Bend nasemgwaqweni losuka khona kumhlaba ubovu ubheke eBhunya sinisatibona futhi emgwaqweni losuka khona emafutheni ubheke khona eMandla Ngampisi nanawusuka khona eMandla Ngampisi ubheke khona kuSihoye bashayeli baxwayiswa ukuthi izinga labo lekunaka kuleti ndzawo leti alibe ngilesetulu kakhulu banake litubane labanahamba ngalo baphindze futhi bakhulise umgamu labalandzelana ngawo bashayeli ke labawuthi bahambe khona etindzaweni lapho khona kuphithitela khona abantwana besikole bayexwayiswa ukuthi izinga labo lekunaka alibe ngilesetulu kakhulu banciphise litubane labahamba ngalo baphindze futhi bakugweme konke lokungabaphatamisa basahamba kuleyo ndzawo leyo ke ingako lesinato ngikhaba inkosi namhla ekuseni
wakho Ngamane nozipho Maseko usipha i-traffic update bongosi sosichazele ke thikabeto ukuthi tikuphi labatawo qhuba nje imotolo eMbabane imigwaqo lebheka lapha kubo late ucela ukuthi nicaphele ngaleke kubo SOS nakhona kunemigwaqo le solo i-under construction nakhona siyacela ukuthi sibeketelelane kakhulu ekuseni nakusagijinywa kusayiwa emisebenzini 57 minutes after 6 sitawuba hlolet market sitawubuya netindzaba.
Get ready, Eswatini. The Battle of Brains is back on your screens. The Mabane Municipality Council Spelling Bee is back live on Eswatini television.
Please spell the word fairness.
Fairness. Fairness.
Witness the spelling mastery, creativity, and determination of our youth as they compete for the top prize.
Please spell the word rebellious.
Rebellious. REBELLIOUS.
Don't miss it. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. starting this July on Eswatini TV.
Welcome back. These are our English news. Finally, the Prime Minister, His Excellency Russell Dlamini, has delivered the Grand Plan for National Transformation to the members of Parliament. Speaking at the Peaks Peak Hotel, the Premier informed Parliament that this is still a draft document and they will be taking inputs from all stakeholders.
During the People's Parliament, the then NDMA CEO Russell Dlamini during his presentation highlighted the importance of the kingdom to have a long-term plan of national transformation. He did not know that their majesties were going to appoint him to lead cabinet and present the national plan of action. That plan is getting ready to be unveiled since the Prime Minister Russell Dlamini is now engaging Parliament to solicit their views and the contributions on the plan. The Speaker of the House of Assembly, Jabulan Mabuza, assured the Prime Minister that they will play their role to ensure that the plan succeeds.
Sidimisele bahlonishwayo ngiyanicela nani ukuthi sisayilalela le document bayipresenta nathi si-contributor at the same time sidibambe tintfo lokutawutsi nathi bese siphumelelisa strategy sethu sephalamende ngoba strategy sithi iphalamende ayihambe ye bantwini so ke siyakholwa ukuthi nisalalela lokunye ndawo sinasenifike kuma constituency bese niyayiva imuvo yesive after senitholile nine loko labantu abasicathathele kona namuhla kuyawuthi ke ngasekugcineni ke ngoba wethu umsebenzi njengoba ngishido wenda i-oversight kuhulumende mhlase bathi seyi-final product le document siyawubeke sesiya-engage ngalawo ma-motions.
The Prime Minister Russell Dlamini says they are ready to take submissions from all stakeholders involved.
Today, Eswatini stands at critical crossroads. Will we continue on the path that has led us here today, or will we brave a different path altogether? The Grand Plan is government's attempt to aim higher than we have before and set our sights on new possibilities. Ultimately, we believe that the kingdom can and should aspire to reach high income status in the next few decades and be counted, as His Majesty has frequently mentioned. There are three characteristics of a grander strategy. It must be ambitious, innovative, and realistic. This plan is all three in one. The objective is that it must stimulate interest even amongst intellectuals and attract participation from people of diverse background who want to be part of something big that will positively impact the country.
Government will up Malangeni to achieve what is articulated in the Grand Plan of Action. Reporting, I am Kian Msibi with LinkedIn Kule, Pix Peak.
The Deputy Prime Minister's office received assistive devices from the Children Evangelism Fellowship, which will assist people with disabilities. The donated things include wheelchairs, crutches, white canes, amongst other things.
Upon seeing the need to assist people with disabilities, members from the Children Evangelism Fellowship have donated assistive devices to the Deputy Prime Minister's office. The members say they have seen the good work by the Deputy Prime Minister, thus the need to lend a helping hand. They say they themselves have a family member with disability, so they fully understand what they are going through.
And through the experience, God led the ministries to help all over the world, including Eswatini. And I visited them because I'm currently studying in the States right now. And through the connection we made there, we were able to link Eswatini with the United States in Los Angeles Shalom Disability Ministries.
It is all by the Lord's grace, and we give Him thanks and praise and glorify Him. We'd like to express my deepest gratitude to Mr. Makama for Portugal. He worked hard to help me receive free text.
Fort Swaz Bongani Makama says the donated assistive devices will go a long way in making better the lives of people with disabilities.
We knew them last year, but they have done a great thing that we cannot even forget as Forza. Assistive devices, it is always a crisis for the country.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Kusile Dada, says it is gratifying to see such acts of good faith where people know the value of God in people's everyday lives.
Let us embrace love so that we can share the love that we have with those that are somehow disadvantaged. So we're saying thank you to the Park family for loving the people with disability, and that these assistive devices will definitely take us a long way.
The donated devices are estimated to be worth over 800,000 Malangeni. Reporting I'm Kiani Msibi with Nokupiwa Mpamali Mbabane.
The Ministry of Natural Resources Senate Portfolio Committee is calling for immediate government attention to two major issues, which is the planned power outages and the thriving black market in stolen copper. Now, the Honourable Minister was speaking when delivering the ministry's performance report in Parliament.
Before a Senate Portfolio Committee, the Honourable Minister of Natural Resources and Energy, Prince Longo Kela, made his preamble on the performance of the ministry for the first quarter of the 2025-2026 financial year.
Hydropower, Mr. Chairman, traditionally offers cheaper electricity compared to coal and gas. The low dam, therefore, in the Kariba dam have resulted in scarcity of hydro-generated power in the region, resulting in increased prices of electricity. This has further created a scarcity in the Southern African power pool markets, where in the past EEC sourced cheaper power through the trading platforms.
The Honourable Committee made submissions.
I-National Land Policy seyiqaliwe iyasetshenziswa. Siyabonga kakhulu kuloko edibeni ngoba kudasisida ukuthi sathi ukuthi tindzaba temhlaba tihamba njani nekuthi timanageka kanjani. Uthole ukuthi nga-3 silala ucishile gas. So uyovutha ngayo ngoba kukhanyiswa ngesakhizi. So ngikukhanda ukuthi lokho silalo kuyinkinga. Engabethi indlela tekwatisa sive tithini ngalendzaba yokucima kwalogesi. Che kunendzaba yokuthi nakucime logesi potentially singaba netigebengu ukuthi tigebengu khanze ukuthi setithatha indzawo. Iqiniso ukuthi vele sesihlala ngemnyama. Kepha-ke emaswati ngeliciniso kungathi kwashile ngoba onke abebona sekumnyama abone sekukhanya kungade ukuthi kambe kuqale nini sesilo shedding noma vele logesi ubalekile uyabuka.
Scrap in its literal terms lisho scrap slat nase tokuchachwa nje indlela lasho ngayo babeshifu utokuchachwa into lensha brand new lipalile liyinzele lisha uchachwa imoto lephilako liphatha ubone ukuthi this is fresh i-copper isese fresh uyabona ukuthi this one is not scrap but it's being traded.
The Honourable Committee, amongst other matters, said government should see to it that newly discovered mines operates fully to boost economic growth. Reporting Samgasiwe Koza, Parliament.
The Honourable Minister of Education and Training, Owen Ngumalo, says government has on the pipeline a project that will address the existing gaps in the hiring process of teachers. The minister was speaking in Parliament on Monday.
Naba kakhulu naba base higher education le actors ubena kusibabophe lokunye ukwenza kusibabhaca njengoba nakho nawe bekwenzeka kubhacela ufuthi sokugangile kepha na ke vele lo mthetho uyasho ukuthi asibabophe.
The ministry, through the Eswatini Higher Education Council, agrees with Parliament that there is a need to bring to justice uncredited private institutions that gives bogus qualifications. The ministry also knows the delays and gaps in the hiring and filling up of vacant posts in schools, and a properly structured framework is at work.
Well, the Honourable Minister of Public Service, Mabulala Masego, the ministry is working on addressing issues of cost of living adjustments for the civil service, and that will cost government 1.2 billion emalangeni.
The Honourable Minister of Public Service, Mabulala Masego, informed the Senate Portfolio Committee that government has 2,600 staff houses against over 44,000 civil servants. The Honourable Committee then debated the minister's report.
kusebenzele isitulo ligaxwe ijazi kude umuntu olamva kwaso ngizaba PMS lesikhathi bebasibekile ukuthi batabe sebayirulile ngale ndlela basho ngathi bataqala ku top management bayiphansi ukuthi usese happy nale ndlela lehamba ngayo ukuthi lelitiko lakhe ngiloleli bambele ukuthi kungasuka umsindo
ngibona nami PSPF yandlondlobala nasi sive solo kukhona lokusolo kukhulunywa kancane kancane ingabe kukhona yini longasisherishela khona.
Ngicela kubonga kakhulu le improvement lapha ku PSPF Public Service Pension Fund lo 37 billion ngicabanga ukuthi 37 billion or 37 million kodwa ngathi indvuna sithi 37 billion ibisuka ku 34 billion.
Lo 6 sithakhuluma ngaye wamhla ka 15 August. How likely is that? Usiniketa nje info sibase imbema ngethemba noma uhulumeni letawendeka yini vele.
The Honorable Minister gave responses.
It's a massive service now, active abantu, aphatheke kahle, akhona ukuya ibhedlela nawo, lesifuna nguye, but-ke sisakusebenza siyabona ukuthi kucoleka kanjani. Sesembisa consultant ukuthi lo 6 weeks vele sambamba futhi-ke vele kwaba ultimatum lesaniketwa yona ukuthi 6 weeks kufanele besicedzile. Sesicedzile thina la phase 2 si-public service. Bese kuba ngabe phela kudla bese uwashela netitsha ihlobo letitsha ukuphakela ukubungutsele kahle bese uphinde uyambona siyathatha ngenhlonipho umhlaba phansi kwekho.
On his preamble, the Honorable Minister of Public Service, Mablala Masego, said the Eswatini Public Service Pension Fund has made a 3 billion growth in assets. Reporting Samuel Siwe-Khoza, Parliament.
With countries under SACU given a 12-month notice period and the possibility of funding being withdrawn, Eswatini may eventually be forced to raise its debt-to-GDP ratio to 60%, a move that could strain public finances. Explaining the country's cautious stance, Minister of Finance Neil Reichenberg said government cannot afford to increase the ratio at the moment.
The Minister for Finance, Honorable Neil Reichenberg, explains why it is crucial to keep the debt-to-GDP ratio at about 40%.
The cost of our borrowing is still very good when it comes to our external debt. Domestic debt is a bit expensive, but external debt is still very well priced. So if we go higher with our debt-to-GDP ratio, money starts costing us more, as well as not everyone wants to loan you money anymore because you become more risky. But the nice thing is our low ratio also gives us confidence in the private sector. People are keen to invest in our country. They feel safe here. SACU is quite a large portion of our funding. And we need to have a possible plan B because SACU could end. It's not dangerous at the moment. I think there's nothing to be scared about. But at the same time, it could come to an end. And there's a 12-month notice period that we have. And then, SACU might come to a grinding halt. And for that reason, it's wise of Eswatini to have a low debt to GDP, meaning that if we do have some kind of crisis like that, we then do have the headroom to grow from a 40% even to a 60%, which we could possibly manage. It won't be fun, but we could possibly manage at that rate.
In the recent first quarter report, the Minister of Finance stated that the preliminary debt figures show that as of 30th June this year, the total public debt stood at 36.76 billion emalangeni, which is equivalent to 37.79% of the gross domestic product. The report further articulates that this is composed of domestic debt amounting to 20.65 billion emalangeni, which is equivalent to 21.23% of the gross domestic product, and external debt amounting to 16.11 billion emalangeni, which is equivalent to 16.56% of the GDP. Reporting Nelson Dlangamandla, some visuals from the Ministry of Finance.
The Kingdom of Eswatini is set to host the inaugural Tourism Indaba from the 20th to the 21st of this month. It is going to be an event that is expected to boost the tourism sector. It is a major contributor to the national economy. And the Minister for Tourism and Environmental Affairs, Jane Simelane, says this will be a game changer for the industry.
The Tourism Indaba is usually held in South Africa, where various countries, including Eswatini, come together to explore strategies for boosting the tourism sector. For the first time this year, Eswatini will host the event, a major milestone for the country. The Minister for Tourism, Jane Simelane, stated that this year's discussions will focus on how technology and innovation can be harnessed to grow the tourism industry.
Kulokunye bantu bafisa kungenela indzaba taka-tourism, kodwa ingcinamba kube timali tekucala imsebenti lihambisana nendzaba tekuvakasha. Kokuthi lapho sithini, sitawuphuma kanjani. Kunengana nje lesitabe sikubuka. Nikokuthi-ke lenye indzaba siyafisa lokuyikhulisa le industry ngoba phela nasifisa kukhanga tivakashi talolu hlobo letinyenti nje. Asifuni lokuthi kwekucala nje. Asifuni lokuthi umuntu ete eveni ngenjwayelo yokuthi ngiyawubuka nje tinyamatane kuphela noma ngiya ehotela kuphela.
She also emphasized that there will be a panel discussion which will explore how culture, national events including football, can play a role in increasing tourism. According to the National Labour Market Skills Project, tourism contributes 23.9% to the country's gross domestic product. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Mbabane.
We turn the page now and look at our international news. At least 40 Palestinians were killed by Israeli gunfire and airstrikes on Gaza, including a 10 seeking aid. Health authorities said that adding another 5 had died of starvation in what humanitarian agencies warn may be an unfollowing famine.
At the Egyptian border, dozens of trucks carrying aid roll towards Gaza. The small amount of humanitarian supplies are far from adequate to serve the Strip's population as more and more people die of starvation. But even after the aid enters the territory, many have trouble accessing it, particularly orphan children or widows, like at this Israeli-run distribution hub in Gaza's north.
I go to collect aid and risk my life to bring flour for my mother and siblings. I also collect cardboard.
My husband's paralysed, and there are widows and women like me who can't secure food for their children. Some young men take the aid and sell it at high prices. I am helpless and cannot afford to buy it.
Many here are demanding a return to a system where aid was sent to warehouses and then text messages informed families to collect their share. Since May 26, a US and Israel-backed organization called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has distributed the bulk of the aid allowed into the Strip. In that time, more than 1,300 Palestinians have been killed while seeking food, over 850 in the vicinity of GHF sites, according to the United Nations. It's a risk many are willing to take, like this man who said he was wounded.
I came to get aid, but today wasn't my day. I hope God provides next time, even though I was injured.
Amid international outcry, Israel announced steps last week to let more aid reach the population, including brief pauses in fighting in some areas. Gaza's media office says that nearly 1,600 aid trucks have arrived since Israel eased restrictions, though witnesses and Hamas sources say many of those were looted by desperate civilians.
New images of emaciated Israeli hostages held in Gaza have horrified Israelis and added pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire with Hamas, even as his government considers another expansion of the nearly 22-month war.
The videos showing 2 frail, emaciated Israeli hostages came as a terrible reminder of the plight of the dozens still detained in Gaza. France 24 is only broadcasting stills of the videos, which were made under extreme duress. These are Evyatar David and Rom Braslavsky before they were kidnapped on October 7th, 2023, 668 days ago. In Israel, the reaction was one of deep distress. More than 60,000 Israelis gathered on Saturday, demanding a deal for the hostages' release.
My child is dying. I've seen it with my own eyes. And the Prime Minister saw it too. And he knows his situation and the situation of the rest of the hostages. And yet, he chooses again and again not to save him.
By that, this father means Benjamin Netanyahu is choosing to continue the war. at the hostages' expense. For his part, Netanyahu said he was horrified by the video and asked the International Committee of the Red Cross to provide the hostages still held in Gaza with food and medical equipment.
They starve them like the Nazis starved the Jews.
Internationally, leaders were unanimous. The German Chancellor said the videos show that Hamas should not play a role in the future of Gaza. The EU's top ambassador condemned the group's barbarity, while the French president called it abject cruelty and unlimited inhumanity, continuing, "This is what Hamas embodies." The UN Security Council is meeting Tuesday to discuss the situation. Of the 49 hostages still held, less than half are thought to be alive. Hamas's military wing said it was ready to allow Red Cross access to them if humanitarian corridors for aid deliveries are opened in a regular and permanent manner in Gaza.
The blast on August 4, 2020 was one of the world's largest non-nuclear explosions, devastating swaths of the Lebanese capital and killing more than 220 people and injuring over 6,500.
August 4th, 2020. Beirut residents are shocked to see a cloud of smoke rising into the sky above their city's port. Then the unthinkable, a massive explosion sends a supersonic shockwave tearing through the capital. The blast, fueled by more than 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate left improperly stored at the port for some 7 years. Entire neighborhoods leveled, 235 killed, more than 6,000 wounded, property damage running into the billions. 5 years later, victims' relatives say justice feels as far away as ever, but they're not giving up.
We're still demanding justice. We haven't forgotten. And we believe there will be justice, but only if politicians in Lebanon take their hands off the judiciary system.
In February 2021, the first investigating judge assigned to the case, Fadi Sawan, was removed from it after accusing several high-level officials and former deputies of negligence. His replacement, Tariq Bitar, has issued dozens of arrest warrants against port employees, customs officials, and politicians. Lebanon's powerful Islamist militia Hezbollah says it's being unfairly targeted in the probe. It has demanded Bitar be fired. After a demonstration against the judge descended into armed confrontation, suspects have turned to a strategy of obstruction, filing dozens of appeals. The case also stalled in part due to Lebanon's ongoing economic collapse and war with neighboring Israel. January's electoral victory of new President Joseph Aoun has rekindled hopes for justice, with his administration promising to complete the investigation. An indictment from Bitar had been expected over the summer. That deadline now pushed back to the end of the year.
U.S. President Donald Trump once again postponed the implementation of his long-threatened taxes last week, instead announcing that dozens of economies will face new rates on the 7th of August.
Donald Trump's decision to impose sweeping tariffs in every corner of the globe sparked outrage and even protests like here in Brazil. The US president linked the 50% tariffs to the trial of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Those tariffs, along with others across the planet, are set to snap into effect on August 7th, after several delays, which, according to Trump, are meant to give countries time to negotiate. Wall Street traders have called it taco trade. That's an acronym for Trump always chickens out, in reference to Trump's habit of threatening to impose tariffs and backing out at the last moment. Switzerland now has just a few days to negotiate a deal before it's hit with 39% import duties. Canada says it's optimistic it will reach an agreement to avoid 35% tariffs on its own exports.
The conversations have been informative, constructive, and cordial. I would expect the Prime Minister will have a conversation with the President over the next number of days.
While Trump may have scored political victories with headline tariff figures, analysts say his erratic trade policy has already alienated traditional allies.
He doesn't like the leader, old or new, of Canada, Trudeau or Carney, and so he's teaching him a lesson, Trump thinks, by increasing those tariffs and making it difficult on the Canadian economy. That's how our decisions are being made. And if it sounds insane to you, that's because it is.
Blanket tariffs may also slow the creation of manufacturing jobs by increasing the cost of imported materials such as steel, aluminium and machinery. The latest economic indicators could also be a warning of things to come. Last Friday's jobs report showed hiring had slowed in July, a sign the US economy could be heading into a recession.
Well, Donald Trump also confirmed his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, will visit Russia ahead of a deadline that U.S. President has set for Russia to agree to end the Ukraine war or face new sanctions. Witkoff is expected in Moscow in the middle of this week.
Some with windows blown out, others gutted by fire. These electronic stores in Odessa suffered heavy damage from a Russian drone attack overnight. By morning, business owners were working to clear the debris and salvage anything left. For many, this marketplace was their primary source of income.
It used to be a shop. We sold computer equipment. It burned down completely. I have no words.
I didn't expect it to be this bad. I thought there would be some damage, but for everything to burn down, I never imagined that.
No one was injured in the attack, though drones also caused damage to residential buildings and cars. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian drone attack damaged a power line and sparked a fire at a train station in Russia's southern region of Volgograd, according to local authorities. Kiev has said it will intensify its air attacks against Russia in response to an increase in attacks on Ukrainian territory in recent weeks, which have killed dozens of civilians. It comes as the United States continues to put pressure on Moscow to agree to a ceasefire. Washington's special envoy Steve Witkoff is due to visit Russia this week in a bid to expedite the process. Donald Trump has threatened new sanctions on Moscow if it does not make progress towards a peace deal.
Steve Witkoff's message will be to the Russians. Is there anything they can do to avoid sanctions at this point?
Yeah, get a deal where people stop getting killed. They're wily characters, and they're pretty good at avoiding sanctions, so we'll see what happens.
Witkoff has met Russian President Vladimir Putin multiple times. On Monday, the Kremlin said another meeting was possible, and it considered talks with the special envoy to be important, substantial, and helpful.
In our sports news, ahead of the 2025 Too Fast and Too Furious cycling competition, different cycling clubs continue with preparations of the tournament. DRD Cycling Club continue with preparations with an aim to make the podium finish this year. And the competition will be held on the 16th of August this year.
In preparations of the 2025 Too Fast and Too Furious cycling competition, different clubs continue with their preparations. DRD Cycling Club is in hard training ahead of the competition.
Ngilungiselela na race letako lemhla ka-16 ye Too Fast Too Furious.
Le terrain le ngibuka ukuthi itangisita kakhulu because almost similar.
Sihle Dlamini and Mduduzi Zwane, who got a chance to speak to Eswatini TV sports team, they did mention that their preparations are going accordingly and they are looking forward to a podium finish. The two believe that it is in their main target to be on the stage in this year's competition. The tournament will be held on the 16th of August this year, with the three categories being 100 kilometers, 75 kilometers, and 25 kilometers. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Musonera, Babane.
28 minutes after 7. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Kusile Breakfast Show. The show is not over. Kusile has an interview for you after the break.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusemini.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Imagine being part of a journey that uncovers the beauty of untold stories. Get ready to be part of something epic. You don't want to be left out, and you definitely don't want to miss out. Join the journey of uncovering untold stories through art, words, and hands. O-U-T out. Well, that's poetry. Poetry. Don't blink or you'll miss it. Every Monday, 6:30 p.m. Screens on, eyes glued.
Nangiyobeleka bekunalomnye sisinde satholana lesibhedlela singadani ukuthi sibelekele umuntu munye.
Ngisho umntwana nyamehlika ngomuzi. Sathi ngathi umlahla.
Mina bengiphila impilo yokuhlala ngigijima ngaso sonke isikhathi ngekuba bede badala. Ngakumva nami ngitolala naye emapayipini kuNkulunkulu tosisiwe.
Akabuyele emuva kakhulu ngemaqiniso. Asukuyanyaza tena. Angithethi. Into wathi ngimdala. Akasudlala lo mntwana ngayo.
Welcome back to the program. Following the COP15 Ramsar Convention on Wetlands held in Zimbabwe, bringing together global stakeholders in wetland conservation, young environmental advocates are raising their voices in a call for action to protect these ecosystems. In this next conversation, we engage a passionate environmental champion and president of the African Young Leaders Foundation in Eswatini, Heather Evans Nkomo, on the importance of wetlands in climate resilience, biodiversity, and community livelihoods. A very good morning to you, Heather. Thank you very much for your time. You were part of the COP15 conference. What were your overall impressions of the convention, and which key commitments stood out to you, particularly those addressing the role of youth in advancing wetland conservation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope I'm audible. So my general sentiment from COP15 was that the convention is clearly moving beyond mere challenges to the solutions that to its core planning and operational framework. I'm sorry, I'm scared. So my key takeaways with the institution.
Right, Heather, would like to see your video, please.
Okay, I'm trying to fix my video here. Can you just give me a minute? I'm having a problem.
You are audible, though if you can just attempt to fix, we're trying to get you via video as well.
Okay, can I work on that one?
Okay.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Nangiyobeleka bekunalomnye sisi nje satholana lesibhedlela singadani ukuthi sibelekele umuntu munye.
Ngingasho ukuthi umntwana ngiyamehlika ngomuzi. Sasingathi umlahla.
Mina bengiphila impilo yokuhlala ngigijima ngaso sonke isikhathi ngikubabede badala. Ngakumva nami ngitolala naye emaphayiphini kuNkulunkulu tosisiza.
Akabuyele emuva akhulume amaqiniso. Asukuyanyaza tena. Angithethi. Into wathi ngimdala. Akasudlala lo mntwana ngakho.
Imagine being part of a journey that uncovers the beauty of untold stories. Get ready to be part of something epic. You don't want to be left out, and you definitely don't want to miss out. Join the journey of uncovering untold stories through art, words, and hands. O-U-T out. Well, that's poetry. Poetry. Don't blink or you'll miss it. Every Monday, 6:30 p.m. Screens on, eyes glued.
What if the air your child is breathing is harming their brain, stealing them of their chance to learn, thrive, and grow? This invisible danger is real, urgent, and happening now. We are talking about air pollution and its impact on our brain, and what countries are doing to stop it, from London to Bogota. New studies have emerged linking air pollution to dementia, anxiety, and depression, affecting your brain and mental health. We are talking to Dr. Maria Nera today. Welcome, Maria. Let's start with the impact of air pollution on our health.
Thanks, Vismita. Yes, air pollution is the biggest environmental risk factor for our health. Every year we have 7 million deaths caused by exposure to air pollution. This is a horrible number. Let me give you another figure. 9 out of 10 people in the world is breathing air which quality is not aligned with the recommendations, the guidelines of the World Health Organization. Those little teeny particles in the polluted air, they can go very deep in our lungs, and they can affect as well our brain. But air pollution is not just affecting our lungs and our brain, it's affecting as well the rest of our body, responsible for stroke, cardiovascular diseases, asthma, and even lung cancer.
So Maria, you talked about the teeny particles, the PM 2.5 and PM 10 that we've all heard about, right? But it's not just that, it's also the gases, the carbon monoxide, ozone, etc., right? I remember when we were in New Delhi, our child, my daughter was very young at that time, we worried about her lung health, but we also worried about her cognitive development in that kind of air pollution. Can you elaborate on the impact of air pollution on children's health?
Let me give you an example. When you are pregnant, if you are exposed to high level of pollution, then you might be at risk of low birth weight, premature birth, and even problems on the development of the fetus. As a child, this child exposed to high levels of pollution will have difficulties and more likely to develop asthma, for instance, and later in life, chronic health issues. In addition to that, children are obviously more at risk. First, because they are on development, their little lungs and their body is developing. And then they breathe faster than we do, so they take more quantity of air for their size, and they play outside, so they will have more exposure, and they cannot control the exposure. So it's our responsibility to protect them and make sure that the health of our children is developed in a healthy environment.
So Maria, if 9 out of 10 people are breathing polluted air, how can we protect our health?
We definitely have some individual measures we can take. We can reduce exposure by avoiding maybe the most trafficked roads or the most congested areas in the city where you live, or avoiding to practice sport or walking in those very polluted places. Or even at home, looking at the fuels you use for cooking and making sure that you use the cleanest possible ones. However, those are individual choices, and you are not always able to take those choices. So it's more a question of governments taking very bold legislation, measures, and interventions to protect all of us.
So Maria, we know that this feels overwhelming, right? Feels like, what can individuals do? Can you give us examples of cities or countries where this has been turned around and air pollution has been reduced drastically?
Absolutely, and we have perfect demonstration that it can be done. For instance, the European Union, the European Parliament has just adopted a directive on air quality, which is very much aligned to WHO's recommendations and guidelines. That will create a big protection for the health of the Europeans under that legislation. We have examples as well in China, where they have demonstrated that you can reduce air pollution while still maintaining a good economic growth. And then cities, you can obtain incredible results. The mayor of Paris has able to reduce by 50% in the last 20 years the air pollution and therefore all the diseases associated by putting in place some traffic recommendations, green spaces, more lines for pedestrians and bicycles. We have the London experience as well, ultra-low emission zones, demonstrating that air pollution was reduced and air respiratory diseases associated. We have Colombia. In Bogota, they are putting in place a fleet of buses which are 100% electrical. So there are very good examples. There are many, but we need to push for more. And of course, imagine where everybody will be aware and putting in place these directives and recommendations. It will be a healthier environment for all of us, and our health will be so much benefited.
Thank you, Maria. That was Science in 5 today. Until next time, then stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Did you know that there's something like 1.4 billion cars in the world? That's about one car for every 6 people. Cars, not only a way to get around, but also a marvel of engineering. Thousands of parts, crafted in factories all over the world, each designed to interconnect and assemble into a single product. Cars, like this one, are just one example of something made possible by something we call supply chains. These supply chains are the assembly line that creates and delivers the products that you and I, the consumers, want to buy. A vast, interconnected network of production that turns raw materials from all over the world into finished products and delivers them to you. The upside? We get cool stuff like this phone. Downside, if even one of those thousands of pieces is missing or late, well, you don't really have anything, do you? It wasn't always this complicated though. Back in the day, you'd hammer together some boards, hitch it to a horse, and with a little elbow grease, you had yourself a ride. Until around 100 years ago, something rolled into the scene that changed the game. The first mass-produced automobiles were assembled in the US and could mostly be made from domestic materials. But not everything. Things like the rubber and the metals had to be imported from abroad. And it all had to get to the factory floor in time to be assembled into a car. Over time, cars got more elaborate, luxurious, safe. Engineers added things like microchips, which are complex products themselves, requiring their own production processes. Eventually, we got the supply chain down to a science. People wanted more, and so producers put out more and refined production to get them out quicker and quicker. Suppliers timed things out so that goods would get to the factory just when they were needed. And it wasn't just cars. Even the screen you're watching me on right now was sourced from multiple countries. And then came the pandemic. Ports and borders closed, factory workers were sent home. The whole supply chain was tangled up by things arriving late or not at all. And all this at a time when people were trying to buy more stuff, like cars. When things started reopening, there was a huge backlog, resulting in traffic jams in ports. Car makers didn't have the parts they needed, like this one, because factories making those parts didn't have the people or the materials that they needed. And things still aren't back where they were before, which has led some people to question the effectiveness of the whole global production system, and whether the supply chain has just become too complicated. In the face of major shocks, like a pandemic or a war, are supply chains too fragile? And if they are, what can we do about it? Some people have called for reshoring, that is, moving production back home. But research doesn't show that it would improve resilience. It's basically like putting all your eggs in one basket. So, what am I driving at here? Well, to get where we're going, we need one another.
Welcome back. My apologies there. We were supposed to be in conversation with President of the African Young Leaders Foundation in Eswatini, Heather Evans Nkomo. However, due to a technical connectivity glitch, that conversation would no longer be occurring today. Although, moving on to this, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres briefed member states during an informal meeting of the General Assembly on the next phase of the UN80 initiative, highlighting steps needed to streamline how the organization implements the thousands of mandates that guide its work. As we all know, these problems have grown worse. We must learn from what went wrong. We must do better, and I believe we can, Guterres said today.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity. Since I last briefed you on the UN80 initiative, work has advanced across all 3 work streams. Let me begin with a brief update. With respect to the first work stream on efficiencies and improvements, we are finalizing a first package of concrete proposals aiming at strengthening accountability, improving service delivery, and reducing costs across the United Nations system, with particular attention to those who are most in need of our support. For the Secretariat, these proposals will be reflected in the revised estimates for the 2026 programme budget to be submitted for consideration to the General Assembly in the upcoming session. Further work will be developed after this proposal, and it will be included in our proposals for the programme budget of 2027. With regard to the third work stream on structural changes and programmatic realignments, principals from across the UN system are advancing work in 7 thematic clusters. Some briefed you on their initial findings last month. I received an overall preview of their ideas last week, and I'm now receiving their written contributions. I will review their proposals in detail and keep you informed as the process unfolds in order to be able to present concrete options for your consideration in due course. Today, I want to focus on work stream 2, and specifically the report before you on mandate implementation. You received the report in English yesterday. Translated versions will follow. But the objective of this session is to allow me to do a brief presentation of the report. Let me preface this by clarifying that by mandates, we mean a request or directive for action set out in the UN Charter, a resolution or decision by a UN intergovernmental organ. Before going into the details of this report, I want to stress 2 vital points. First, let me be absolutely clear. Mandates are the business of member states. They are the expression of your will, and they are the sole property and the responsibility of member states. The vital task of creating, reviewing, or retiring them lies with you and you alone. Our role is to implement them fully, faithfully, and efficiently. This report respects that division. It looks at how we carry out the mandates you entrust to us. At the same time, we offer some reflections for your consideration in the case that member states choose to launch an intergovernmental process on mandate review. Second, we recognize that mandates are critical to everything we do. They define our work, they shape our structures, they are the basis of how we are held accountable. And yet, for many years, there has been broad recognition, including most especially by the General Assembly, that the way we manage mandates needs to change. The problems are well known. Burdensome processes, overlap, duplicative structures, and the growing gap between mandates and resources. These issues have been identified many times, including through the 2006 mandate review process. But they were not resolved. In fact, as we all know, these problems have grown worse. We must learn from what went wrong. We must do better, and I believe we can. And let me add this. None of the work in implementing mandates is possible without our staff, the women and men of the United Nations. Across duty stations and time zones, in headquarters and in the field, they are the ones who translate mandates into action, delivering services, supporting peace processes, responding to crises, and upholding the values and principles of the UN Charter every day. Their expertise, dedication and courage are indispensable to this endeavour. If we are to improve how we implement mandates, we must also support and empower the people who carry them out. Excellencies, today I am putting forward some ideas for your consideration focused on practical solutions. These ideas are new and different in three key ways. First, we utilize new data analytical tools to better understand the scope and scale of the challenge. Second, instead of reviewing thousands of mandates one by one, we focus on the systemic and structural issues that cut across them. Third, the urgency of the situation and the potential benefits of reform demand a new level of seriousness and shared resolve. I stress again, this is not about questioning your decisions, it is about implementing them more effectively, more efficiently, and with greater impact. Excellencies, the report before you takes a full life cycle approach to the management of mandates. It begins in how mandates are created, it examines how they are delivered, and it looks at how or whether they are reviewed and assessed. At each stage, the report offers possible actions. Some are for your considerations, others are directed to the Secretariat as appropriate. But one principle runs through them all. We must never lose sight of the people we serve. Mandates are not ends in themselves, they are tools to deliver real results in real lives, in the real world. Let me now turn to some of the specific proposals, starting with mandate creation. The report identifies two major challenges. First, the mandate landscape is vast and often opaque. There is no easy way to know what already exists or what has been adopted across different bodies. Today, there are more than 40,000 resolutions and decisions on the books and counting. The risks of duplication and overlap are clear. One suggestion is the creation of a digital mandate registries, easily accessible tools like those already developed under the UN80 initiative for the UN Secretariat and by OHCR and the UNFCCC. Those tools could be scaled system-wide. And with AI-assisted analysis, we can now flag potential duplication before it happens. Second, the design of mandates is getting more complex and more difficult to implement. Texts are getting longer. Since 2020, the average word count of General Assembly resolutions has increased by 55%.
And that was UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres presenting a set of proposals to member states to make the UN more efficient, coherent and impactful. Allow me to quote him, Sfiso, in the rest of his presentation. He says, "We must never lose sight of the people we serve. Mandates are not ends in themselves. They are tools to deliver real results in real lives in the real world."
Very important assertion there, because really you do not want to forget the people that serve, but also it just goes beyond just the policy itself. It's always about the delivery and just taking all those things into undertaking, because like we say, we can always have brochures, we can always have policy statements, but they are close to nothing if we do not really act on them.
And while we do that, we do need to be inclusive, Sifiso, be considerate of the many people in different backgrounds and underserved communities.
The United Nations certainly is, I would say, the poster child for being exemplary when it comes to inclusion and inclusivity. That it's 58 minutes after 7. Thank you for staying with us here on Kusile Breakfast Show, the Tuesday edition. We hope that you're having yourselves a good morning and that you will go ahead and enjoy the rest of your day. Just to remind you, there are roads that you are supposed to take caution of where constructions are underway. Mbabane is fixing a lot of its road network. So if you will remember or refer back to that conversation with Nozi Paul Masego, our surgeon, who gave us our traffic update.
Otherwise, until the next edition, do have yourself a lovely day.